Cool, yes. So I can't tell you so much about the 7 habits of highly successful people. What I'm trying to talk to you about today is the 7 habits of highly depressive designers. And as promised, if this flicker works, which it's... Is there another one? Let's do that. Number 5 will blow your mind. Excellent. So this works as well. But before we start, a little content note. So what we're discussing today is a highly sensitive topic, and I'm trying to sprinkle a bit of humor in it as well, but it really is a very personal, sensitive topic. And if you currently feel you're maybe in a dark place or being exposed to this kind of content is not right for you, maybe, I don't know, switch off or leave the room, no questions asked, definitely. There will also be mentions of suicidal thoughts, so this again might trigger some people just as a content note. I also had the brilliant idea of doing this presentation in Figma to add some clever little animations. Turns out there's no speaker notes in Figma, and now it's just a static PDF, so bear with me if I stumble across a few things here. Also, a disclaimer, today I'm going to tell you about my personal journey in and out of a depressive episode, some learnings and observations that I've made along the way, but I'm by no means a healthcare professional. So everything you hear today, don't take it as medical advice or individual advice at all. It's really my personal story. I'm also today not representing my employer in any shape or form. I'm just here as a private Clive. As a private Clive, working in UX for around about 15 years definitely leaves a mark on you. So every time I leave my house, I see wonderful design artifacts everywhere. I've started a wireframe collection that is quite impressive. I've come to a stage in my career where people actually pay me to stand on a stage to point at things, like today or here in Budapest, which is quite cool. So by conventional measures, maybe that can be considered quite successful. But the story I'd like to tell you today starts in 2019. After some years as a freelancer, I left my design comfort zone a little bit, joined the Adobe XD team as a strategic business development manager. And later that year, I had the privilege of being on a lovely leisure trip with my partner to California, combining a road trip with some work in San Francisco and visiting the Max conference in LA later that year. So here's us, after 5 glasses of wine, looking rather pleased with ourselves in the aptly named Topper Mountains. Our team hotel, also not too shabby, the view and food on offer. I'd say, by and large, you could say life was pretty good. Fast forward a few months, my culinary and accommodation standards had slipped quite a little bit. And while I do have a thing for brutalist architecture, I wasn't quite prepared to spend some weeks inside the psychiatric ward of my local hospital. And I wasn't prepared for this brutal food on offering as well. And as a food lover, this was really something else. But what happened? To look at this, we need to rewind the clock a little bit and look at some other pictures from this wonderful pleasure trip to California. Everywhere I went, outside of my shiny tech offices or luxury hotels, there was just signs of abject poverty, sickening homelessness, very open substance abuse, and literally droves of mentally disturbed people roaming the streets everywhere. And my head and my gut couldn't really process this constant jumping of living my best life and literally stepping over people that were left to rot on the streets of the land of the free. So I was there the year before, and I found in 2019 was particularly bad as well. Also, many of the beautiful places that we visited on our road trip were directly or indirectly affected by the terrible wildfires that year. And there were even rumors of the Max conference being called off because there was a literal ring of fire surrounding LA. So while around me, the whole world was on fire, my biggest problem was sitting in a 5-star hotel and finishing a workshop on a design and prototyping tool, which sort of felt a bit off as well. My employer at the time launched a really lovely campaign with Pantone to save the coral reefs, while my own behavior was doing anything but saving the coral reefs and flying all over Europe to customer engagements and events. Really, I had a carbon footprint that would have done the Pope proud. I kept thinking to me, hey, hang on, this is a far cry off from maybe my own self-image as a digital do-gooder. I've been giving talks and conferences as well, how we might use our skills for social good, how could we move from hipster-centric to human-centered design. Yet here, what I was doing was, somehow it felt off, and it started working in my head as well. Also, my intrinsic love for traveling just got replaced by feeling exhausted and stressed. So all those last-minute taxis to the airport, unhealthy snacks between client meetings, standing more in line at security lines than hitting the gym, they definitely also paid their toll on my mental and physical health. It also turned out that leaving my design comfort zone entailed a lot of activities that I really didn't enjoy. So often I felt I spend more time chasing KPIs in Excel than actually working in and on XD. Filling out travel expenses in Concur has sort of taken over solving meaningful problems. And I started getting thoughts in my head like, hey, Clive, all my thoughts, feelings, behaviors were getting really squiggly. I was talking to myself like, hey, you're a failure to your values, you're a traitor to UX, and maybe you're not even very good at your job, despite getting okay feedback from my peers. But this squiggle in my head very quickly turned really bad. My operating system started adding really nasty symptoms to my brain, and there was no way of toggling them back off. It all started with weeks and weeks of not being able to sleep. Doctors trying to treat me with lavender drops against my insomnia. And from there, it just went downhill until I was at a state which was already quite bad, but it was still in denial also. I said to myself, hey, you're Clive, you're in the industry for so long, you've got all these fancy methods, you could use a double diamond maybe to get your way out of this misery, no problem. Yet, it's hard to believe if you look at me now, but this was actually my weight curve plummeting by the end of the year, because someone's shocked there, because at times I literally only ate the bare minimum, or at some days just forgot to eat as well. So my partner coming home from work had to remind me of actually to eat something. Yet, I was still in denial. Maybe I can design sprint my way out of this, not a problem. But actually, the exact opposite happened, and nasty symptoms kept being added all the time. Until at the end, I was in this weird state of being on edge and restless all the time, but also feeling completely numb, as if someone put a cheese bell over my head, and everything was just good. Is this me? Is this the mic? Okay. And outside of work, there were some life events. The first one should have filled me with pure joy, but it actually just added feelings of anxiety to my head as well. I was talking to myself, Clive, you can't even sort your own life at the moment. How do you want to support your partner through pregnancy? How do you want to even be a good father? This really only added to the stress bucket that was in my head and the anxiety I had. We won't talk about this at all. This is enough to be depressive all your life, but I'm used to that, so that was sort of okay. Also in work, things that should have been a work highlight, I just couldn't shoulder anymore. So I was tasked to organize the Adobe booth at the Interaction conference, but everything was just becoming too much, and I had to pull out, and I didn't fly to Milan that year with all the cool designers that I would have loved to have met. This, in turn, added even worse feelings of guilt and shame to my brain, and I couldn't toggle them off. So I felt guilty towards my coworkers, towards my partner, friends and family, and was just ashamed that I couldn't be there and couldn't be the best version of myself that we're so often taught to be. It got so bad that by sort of the beginning of March, really my whole personality had been taken over by what I later learned was a major depressive episode. All my passions and interests, everything that made me me, and as a last word, often my self-deprecating humor, they were all switched off, and I had no chance to switch them back on again. That's how I ended here in this brutalist temple. There was one day when I actually got yelled at by a psychiatrist looking for help. That was a day I just couldn't take enough. I reached a breaking point and admitted myself to the hospital via the accident and emergency department. Yep, what? Mm-hmm. Someone fondling my bum on stage? Not too bad. Sorry. Yeah, okay, that's a good life, yeah. So that's how I ended up here again on that really dark day, via accident and emergency, and I ended up in the crisis intervention ward as an inpatient at the local hospital. Talking about good timing, the absolute icing on the shit cake was, of course, being there during an emerging global pandemic. So COVID rules changed literally every day. The therapy offers and the treatment offers were really scrapped to bare minimum. I couldn't see any visitors, and most of the time I was literally left to my own devices, doom-scrolling pandemic news and maybe having a little walk along the canal. So I wasn't under a curfew, but there was literally nothing nice to do. Kreuzberg was in lockdown, nowhere to meet friends in a restaurant, they couldn't visit me, and so on. Scrolling other current affairs news didn't make things better and just actually made me more fearful for the future of the planet, my loved ones, and myself. So at a particular low point, I actually, for the first time ever in my life, experienced suicidal ideation and had thoughts of suicide. Luckily, I never went forward with it, or I never really planned it, but just having these thoughts alone was really, really scary. And as I learned later, this was triggered by being tapered off too soon of a medication that I took against my insomnia and anxiety. And this is a common withdrawal, and suicidal ideation is a common withdrawal symptom. Apart from this medical error, it was really, there was UX and service design nightmares everywhere on this whole journey. So the level of red tape, confusing processes, systemic personal incompetencies, and very unpleasant interactions were really quite something else. I don't know who's from Berlin here? Well, imagine trying to get an affordable apartment and an appointment at the Bürgeramt at the same time, this time on steroids, and your actual life and sanity dependent on it. But despite all these nightmares, I did encounter a lot of really helpful and kind healthcare professionals in hospital and later in therapy. It wasn't a design sprint. It wasn't the perfect design double diamond. It was definitely a squiggle like this. What helped me was really looking for this emergency help, short-term systemic therapy, a lot of self-reflection, regular exercise, and of course the help and patience of my partner, friends and family, without whom this wouldn't have worked at all to get me out of the worst. So what did I learn, and what am I still learning along the way? First of all, I thought it's a good time to reflect on what health actually means. And this WHO definition, I think, really hits the nail on the head. Also saying that there is no health without mental health. It's an intrinsic part of what makes us healthy. Also, the United Nations have realized this quite some time ago and added good health and well-being in one of the first 17 Sustainable Development Goals. So health and mental health is an intrinsic part of sustainability as well. Also, it's really important to notice everyone has mental health. There's often this talk, oh, he or she has mental health, only when they're depressed or anxiety or burnout. We all have it all the time, and it exists on a continuum. So wherever you might be, it could change within a day or in a week or even within a month. There's different interventions to take. But again, we all have mental health, and it's nothing to be ashamed of or to only mention when it's ill mental health. So I don't know where you are currently on this continuum. If you're here, congratulations. If you're here or here, you probably shouldn't be in this room right now, to be honest. I may be somewhere here at this moment in time, but this could change again next month as well. You never know. But you should just be aware of that. It's in a constant flux. Also, there's about as many mental health disorders as there are designers' job titles, so you can take your pick here. And often it's not very clear-cut. So a lot of these disorders might feed off each other, exist in comorbidity, or start with one and then actually turn into another. So there's a lot there. That's why it's so important to look for professional help and not start diagnosing yourself on your own. So only a professional can sort of find the right diagnosis and suggest the right treatment. It's all also it's all very connected. You might have some ideas that mental health is just your genes or something wrong with your brain chemistry. Actually, if you look at this, which is called the biopsychosocial model, you will see that there's many constituting factors that altogether are part of your mental health. And just looking at this beautiful Venn diagram, I can see 5 to 6 things that definitely had a part of my own journey, or are still having it. And it can get really bad. I think within our industry, talking to a lot of people and my observations, the big bad 3, burnout, anxiety, depression. See what I've done there? Bad. quite clever. I think what a lot of us face, or I've seen colleagues actually face. They're often used interchangeably, but actually a burnout can be characterized by these things, and it's not an official medical condition. So at least in Germany, you probably wouldn't get written off sick purely for burnout. There has to be something else there. And it's mostly related to work stress, although there can be other things as well that cause you to burn out. And the WHO has recently recognized it as an occupational phenomenon since 2019, but it took that long to actually have it recognized by the World Health Organization. This can draw from or feed into anxiety and depression, which are also, as you can see, have a lot of overlaps, might feed into each other, but are actually recognized as true medical conditions that you can be treated for, that you could get drugs, medication, or therapy for, and that you would probably get a sick note for as well, depending on how bad it is. As you can see here, very blurry lines as well. So it's very, very likely, as you remember from my story, if you fall into full depression, there will be elements of anxiety in there, maybe triggered by a burnout before, and vice versa. Again, so important to have a proper professional look at it and give you the right ideas for treatment. Something really useful I learned as well in therapy is the interconnection of your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, called the cognitive triangle. So often a thought might just appear, and there's nothing you can do about it. You can't really fight your thoughts as well, although some people try that. This would trigger your feelings or your emotional response to this particular thought. And out of that, maybe out of all the patterns you learn throughout your life, the beliefs you have about yourself, maybe some traumas you have, you usually behave in a certain way. And that's usually the only thing you can actually really do something about. You can, for example, choose not to believe everything you think. They're not facts, they're just an idea about something. So reflecting on that was a really helpful thing as well. And this cognitive triangle is something that I've been using a lot in sort of difficult situations. What am I observing in our industry? And I think this is definitely not fine. It ties into nicely, I think, what Hertje so eloquently talked about earlier as well. First of all, if you struggle, please note you're definitely not alone. And there's a good reason, I think, why some people have dubbed this the mental health crisis the second pandemic. If you just look at these numbers, it's highly likely that 1 in 4 people in the workplace, sometime along their lifetime of their career, will hit some kind of mental health disorder. It doesn't always have to be full-blown depression, but the other things are bad enough as well. And even if you're not one of the 1 in 4, depending on how bad it is, just like passive smoking, you can really be affected as well by someone else, by the mental health of a loved one or co-worker. So, and if you just look at the numbers, I think the return on investment should be quite obvious as well. That's how you roll. And despite all the mental health awareness weeks, free yoga classes, and Headspace apps, there's quite a bleak picture of mental health in the workplace. I'll just let you read through that quickly while I have a drink. And unfortunately, the graveyards are full of high-performing creative people that maybe on the outside might be high performers, but could have hidden something that is called a high-performing or high-developed depression that you can actually have, or dysthymia. So people acting the part, being admired by all sorts of people for years, but you never know what happens inside there. A bit closer to home as well, many of our design heroes have openly talked about their struggles. Like, see this dialogue between Brad and Paul. Tweets by Ali, Thorsten, and Harley, all are very open about their mental health struggles. And similar to Harley, I found that on reflection, I think a lot of my habits and behaviors probably, as a designer, played a major part in my health journey that I talked about earlier on. And I'm giving you now the 7 habits of highly depressive designers. Number 5 will blow your mind. It's not a scientific study, but I have talked to many industry figures from different grades of seniority, and sort of see if you can see yourself in some of these maybe. So first of all, I think it's our bloody job as well. We're paid to be overthinkers. Ask why 5 times, look at, question the status quo, look at different ways to solve a problem. These might all be professional superpowers, But if you're in a state of mental instability, they can really very quickly lead to rumination, catastrophizing, so only thinking in worst-case scenarios, and later to despair. So who would identify as an overthinker in this room? Sure. Quite a few, so watch it. Habit number 2, I think despite everything being hypergrowth and minimum viable these days, deep down inside, a lot of us are actually perfectionists at heart and want to produce great stuff all the time. But have you ever met a designer who's happy with their portfolio or happy with stuff that's shipped? I haven't really. Interestingly enough, also there's a correlation between procrastination and perfectionism, often rooted in anxiety, and these can form another vicious triangle. So you might be afraid of failure, and then you procrastinate. Then you put on more perfectionism to get it right. This triggers your anxiety and so on, and very quickly you're in a loop. And I think if I look at my career as well, starting out, maybe my spouts of imposter syndrome would have been maybe in the beginning, is this the great concept? Is this a good prototype? The more you go in your career, it could be, have I still got it? Does my team think I'm a jerk? Or am I right in this role? So if you're a junior in this room, just rest assured, it will never go away. It might just manifest in different place. Also, I think we often try to just solve impossible problems, often expectations, often set by people who might have quite a different idea of what proper what proper design is, and we often find ourselves in funny environments there, and get frustrated. Also, I think Mao put it really eloquently, and Hertje alluded to it as well. A lot of us tie a lot of self-worth and identification to being what a designer is and what a designer should be doing with their impact, only to realize quite often in this complex world, maybe A, we can't all be Steve Jobs or Mike Monteiro, and B, an IDO certificate might not cut the mustard to actually solve truly complex and wicked problems. And if you get to this point, this can quickly turn into self-doubt and negative self-talk as well, and questioning what you're doing and why you're here as a designer anyway. So I think I've talked to a lot of people who have come to that stage in their life. Also, yes, dark mode and Figma is great. Going on to design sprint retreats with your heroes is probably somehow great. And the next iPhone will be the greatest version ever. But how is it that I feel a lot of us are just really FOMO victims to the extreme of things that we don't really need, and we often forget our basic human needs as well. Another one I'm definitely guilty of. We might just love what we do a little bit too much. And outside of working hours, it seems almost, if you troll LinkedIn nowadays, it seems almost rude not to be a mentor on ADP list, have a side project, or co-organize some kind of event. Again, I'm the worst in this. I'm still involved in all sorts of event organization and visiting them, when I could actually just be chilling out, watching Peppa Pig, or going to the gym. Finally, I think we talk an awful lot about empathy to the user and adding value to the business, while we're not so great about being empathetic to ourselves. I mean, when's the last time you did an empathy map for yourself or thought about a framework to deliver real value to your own life? I think we are notoriously bad at that. And while we're also in a habitat or environments that often have very band-aid ways of attacking really systemic problems, and while our operating system breeds tech dudes like this, who gets likes for questioning if burnout is really a thing as well, I definitely think we as designers, workers in late-stage capitalism have got our work cut out, because that's all interrelated as well. And capitalism loves to put the onus of resilience onto us as individuals. Here's your app, here's your yoga retreat, just be resilient. I feel it's a bit like telling a poor person, yeah, come on, just stop being poor, and then you'll be all right. So, how's it going? I'm definitely still figuring it out. What I'm trying to do with talks like this, and some workshops I'm preparing, and also some open source resources, is maybe going along with this vision by the Mental Health First Aider movement, which I did as well. And it's a 2-day course that you can take, similar to normal first aid. you'll never be a qualified therapist, but you can learn about some conditions, you can learn how to talk to people and signpost them to adequate help. I think their vision is really quite human-centered. Again, through things like this, I hope to raise more awareness. There's an upcoming event that I have to plug now with the wonderful Nina of Hello Better, which is a prescription mental health app you can get in Germany. She's a user researcher and a qualified therapist, and we'll be doing a webinar on how you can access therapy and mental health care in Germany. That will probably be in November sometime, and it will be a free thing. The missing bit to my story, this maximum lovable product hatched in September 2020. He's also an avid wireframe collector, so the future of design is bright. This maximum lovable product and my personal story definitely helped me to maybe recalibrate my ideas of success. This idea of success is not this perfect pie chart yet, as illustrated by the lovely Liz and Molly, but I think it can be a good North Star to look at some metrics beyond OKRs and KPIs that we know in our day-to-day. And to wrap it up, here's 6 personal top tips. Maybe you get a 7th one for free, we'll see. But again, this is not medical advice, but just stuff that helped me along the way. So if you feel you're struggling or you want to talk to someone who's struggling, it's definitely worth going through these. So learning about this cognitive triangle, I found this really, really helpful. There's also good self-assessment tools online that you can use as a start of your journey, and education is definitely good. But just don't start to think you're the perfect mental health expert here. I mean, we as designers always tell our clients to trust the process, come to us. So now we could let the driver's seat to someone else as well. And it's really important as well to realize to yourself that you have a problem, or you might be sliding into a problem, and deep inside, you'll notice if something is off. Just don't start bullshitting yourself, and don't start thinking you're cleverer than you actually are. Also, again, maybe if you've been used to it as a designer, one-man UX arm as a freelancer, and you can solve your problems, do reach out for help as soon as possible. Don't let it escalate. I mean, in my example, you saw, I think it was in around about 4 months, it really got from really bad to really, really bad. So that whole journey was around about half a year, I'd say. So don't let it escalate, and don't do it all on your own. Also, in our environments, don't move fast and break things. Don't move your brain. Don't break your brain, for heaven's sake. Take all the time that you need. At least in Germany, we're not in the US. You can do that as well, and probably you won't get punished for it. And lastly, I think defining your own personal success metrics are much more important than following the ones that might be set out in our work environment. Very personal top tip would be have a baby and don't kill yourself, but please take that with a pinch of salt, because I know not everyone wants to have babies or can have babies, and yeah, so not killing yourself is probably obvious, but it helped me a lot. So with that, I'm done. I hope this was useful. It could maybe raise some awareness. And I'd really love, if you want to keep in touch and learn about the workshops, the webinar, and so on, it would be really great if you got in touch there. There's a 1-minute feedback survey that would be really helpful for me to get this talk better. And 0 on time. I can't believe it. Thank you very much.